Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. We are now in day 3 of the government shutdown. The Republicans still remain on brand, saying that it is the Democrats who are responsible for this shutdown, when of course it is they who are truly to blame. They've gone as far as putting on government websites messages stating that it is the Democrats who have shuttered the government because they wanted to give health care to illegals, which, of course, as I established previously, is patently false. They've also instructed furloughed government workers to put on their out of office message a similar message, blaming the Democrats for the shutdown and for why they are currently not in the office. And it's in requiring these politically charged out of office messages that the administration may be running into some trouble. What these look like are what one federal worker said felt like coercing subordinates to engage in political activity. And it is. It's one thing to be told to leave an out of office message that says that due to the ongoing government shutdown, they are not at their office, and yet another to say, I am out of the office because the Democrats shut down the government because they refused to back down on desiring to give illegals health care. That to me sounds like a pretty blatant and obvious politically charged statement, and that's a problem because there is a law that was implemented in 1939 called the Hatch Act that prohibits political activities for federal or civil service employees. And a message like that sounds to me like political activity, and so that's prohibited. But as we've observed time and time again, this administration sees laws more as a suggestion, if not an outright impediment that they are perfectly willing to ignore when it convenes them. Though I suppose in this case, the question is, while it certainly is against the spirit of that law, whether or not this constitutes an actual violation of it is a bit up for debate. These out of office messages certainly name Democrats and call them out and paint them in a less than flattering light, but they stop at outright saying the Democrats need to be removed because they did this. That would be an obvious violation of that law, but they're not quite saying that, so maybe they're not quite breaking that law. And that gray area of not quite breaking the law, coming right pretty close, looking like you are, saying things that are very almost breaking the law, but not exactly overtly breaking the law. It's one of the administration's favorite spots to be. They've got that plausible deniability and saying, look, well, we didn't literally break that law, but when you look at it, it looks like they did, or at least they came pretty close to it, and pretty close in a lot of ways is close enough. The Hatch Act, as written, is intended to forbid the knowing encouragement or discouragement of political activity of people that you work with. And it's not exactly doing that. It's not saying, hey, fellow workers, the Democrats are why we're not in the office. We should vote them out when we get a chance. So, because it's not overtly encouraging that type of political activity, they could say, well, it's not breaking the Hatch Act because we're not telling people how to vote or encouraging them to vote a certain way. But even if this enforced out of office message isn't breaking the Hatch Act overtly, the fact that it is amplifying and disseminating a political message that is also untrue is in itself, I feel, a problem, because it is very clearly repeating a message that a particular political party is trying to push against its opposition political party. Not to mention that you are now forcing federal workers to put out a message that does not align with their own personal views. They may not feel that the Democrats are the ones who shut down the government, but now they have to put a message on their email that says that that's something that they believe when it is not. It feels wrong to force these workers to put out messages that they do not personally agree with or believe simply because the administration has required them as federal workers to do so. As one policy expert was quoted as saying, the bottom line really is that this is agencies using taxpayer funds to advance a political agenda, and especially in this case, assuming employees really are being required to send out these messages, it is agencies coercing them into using their positions to engage in overt political speech. And that's what it feels like we're seeing here. So, if it is in fact overt political speech and it is encouraging them to put out political messaging by direction of the federal government, I'd say, yeah, that's a violation of that law. Law broken. Now, the problem there, of course, is okay, law broken, but a law is only as good as its enforcement. And even if you can point to them breaking this law, if there's not going to be any enforcement of it and punishment for having broken it, it almost doesn't matter if they broke that law or not, because there basically has no consequence for having done so. It's become almost an ongoing pattern with this administration that those who are paying attention say, hey, you broke the law. And they say, yeah, so what? What are you going to do about it? And unfortunately, with the Supreme Court basically being in the pocket of the president, oftentimes the answer is nothing because the courts are on his side, are on the side of Republicans, so that when they break laws, they are not punished. And I think one thing that will go to bringing the country back to a sense of healing and normalcy is to make people who break the law in that way afraid to break the law. There have to be consequences and enforcement of laws because a law that is not enforced may as well not be a law at all. And too often now, those within the administration see laws as mere obstacles, if even that, because they know that they'll get away with it, that they're not going to be punished, that there is no enforcement, that there's no accountability. So if there's no fear of what will happen if you do something wrong, you will do something wrong as much as you want because you know that nothing's going to happen to you. And right now, the administration feels as if no matter what laws they break or have broken on their behalf, nothing's going to happen to them. So it's all fine. And sure, breaking 1939's Hatch Act isn't exactly big time law breaking, but it's in not letting those smaller, maybe slightly more inconsequential law breakings get a pass that you open the window to not letting the big deal laws being broken also not get a pass, not get just glossed over. The administration actually fired the Biden era official in charge of enforcement of the Hatch Act rules and replaced him with an election denier. So I get a sense that the administration had a pretty good sense that they were going to either get in trouble for the Hatch Act or intentionally go against it and needed to make sure that the oversight that they might have from that official would no longer be a problem for them. But while enforcement may not be coming from inside the government watchdog group Public Citizen is at least trying to get the law enforced. They announced earlier this week that they are filing 7 Hatch Act complaints against the administration for, quote, explicitly partisan messaging that they put on the homepages for the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the Department of Justice, the Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Management and Budget, and the Department of Agriculture, and, of course, the White House. Greg Holman, a government ethics expert with Public Citizen, was quoted as saying, the Trump administration is violating the Hatch Act with a reckless abandon, using taxpayer dollars to plaster partisan screeds on every government webpage they can get their hands on. They must not be allowed to continue this behavior unchecked. And I would be one to agree. They can't keep getting away with blatantly violating a law, even one that is not extremely detrimental in the grander scheme. When you get down to it, so-called compelled speech erodes the public trust that these are public servants who are there to serve the interest of the publics, not to push a political view or a political agenda. So having them be forced to push an overtly political message, even if you can't pin it as illegal and breaking a law, it's not good for the public good in general, and something that should be discouraged, even if it hasn't been made overtly illegal in this case, possibly. Too much already we've seen the administration try to appropriate this government shutdown for its own ends, and that feels wrong. And hopefully, sometime soon, there will be a consequence for having done that. What that will be remains to be seen, but I anticipate there will be one, and when there is, the country will be better for it. That'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. So I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off another slice of news.